All right, here we are with Adam Fitzgerald once again, the most requested guest on year zero. Honestly, people love you, Adam.
Well,
Why
thanks for
don't you
having
have
me.
your own podcast? But you
Well,
do.
that's a good idea. No, hey, listen, man, it's always a pleasure to talk with you. It's like I've known you for like 30 years.
Oh
We
man,
did,
we've spent 30 years worth of time talking about things.
yeah, I know. I didn't know I was the most, I didn't think of it till you just said it. I'm the most returning guest on your show.
I don't know about returning, but requested for sure.
But
Like, yeah,
requested.
like people love the 9/11 content and they love it. They're like, dude, all this stuff y'all did, this whole series y'all did, blah, blah. I'm like, I don't even know if we finished the series. It was kind of like
We
we
just
got
stopped.
to a point. Yeah, well, we got to
Yeah.
a point. I think both of us were kind of brain dead because we did a lot of it in a row.
Mhm.
It was like
Yeah.
week
Yeah.
after week after week, we were doing that. I think both of us kind of came to a point where it's like, I need a break because this is kicking my ass, you know? And so I'm sure if we went back through the episodes we've done and the content we've done, we could come up with new episodes
Oh, sure.
to do. Like, because there's a
Absolutely.
lot of information that I'm sure we haven't even covered yet. But you were telling me, and I didn't even know this until you just told me. So the biggest revelation of 9/11 came out this year. What
Yep.
happened?
April of 2021. 2023. Remarkably, it was from the Office of Military Commissions. The person's name is Donald Canastraro. He's a former DA agent over 20 years. He was assigned to work at the investigative division of the Office of Military Commissions. And what they uncovered was that there was indeed, now this is not speculation anymore, it's a fact, that the CIA was working inside the United States illegally, conducting a black operation on, it was a signals intelligence operation on two known Al Qaeda operatives that were coming from a high level Al Qaeda meeting in Malaysia. And they were working on with the Saudi General Intelligence Directorate, which is the intelligence arm of Saudi Arabia, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia.
So they were
And
like,
so,
so this was like they were watching like Ben Salman and all these guys. Like who were?
well, they would no. It was just it was a matter of an attaché in Washington D.C. named Muassad Al-Jarrah, who
Okay,
actually was being investigated by the FBI in the Operation Encore investigation, which is a follow up to the Pen Palm investigation of
is
the FBI's
that?
original.
I'm sorry. Is that the guy who had all the FBI agents as like as not house guests? I want to say roommates, like in
No, that's a
California.
different.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay, okay.
yeah,
I was
it's
just
different.
checking.
It's different. No, it's actually
Like,
interesting.
how convenient would that be?
Yeah. Well, no, actually, Muassad Al-Jarrah is actually the director of the Islamic Affairs attaché in Washington, D.C., Ministry of Affairs. He's the director. And what he does is basically he coordinates all the mosques in the United States and he hires imams in them. What the FBI found out was that he was hiring Wahhabi clerics and he was a sympathizer to Al Qaeda. And not only that, he hired imams that would actually be in coordination with Khalid al-Mihdhar and Wahab Hazmi in Los Angeles and San Diego.
Oh
And
shit.
not only that, there were other Saudi operatives that are spies for the government that were actually providing logistical and financial support to Khalid al-Mihdhar and Wahab Hazmi. And all this was known to the CIA because the CIA actually was in charge of the operation. And what Donald Canastraro did was he interviewed former CIA, former FBI officials, and congressional officials that saw this information, which is classified. So these people were speaking anonymously because they can't, say who they are because they'll get in trouble for releasing classified information. But they looked at these files and said that the CIA was indeed running an illegal operation inside the United States. And now with this at hand, I'm like, wow, the media is going to be all over this because everyone's blaming the CIA and not sharing information. Tommy, would you believe it?
Wait,
Nobody covered it.
have you met our media?
Well, yes, but I want to discern too. All media too. Nobody covered this.
Nobody has covered it.
Gray zone.
Yeah.
Russia Today That's who covered it.
That's
And
it.
Florida Bulldog broke the story.
Who's that?
Florida Bulldog is a 9/11 they're a small media program based out in Florida. They're headed by Dan Christensen, who's a fantastic reporter in his own right, and they're the sole only media publication. And I'm not talking about legacy media. They're the only media publication that reports up-to-date information on 9/11. The only one.
So
Florida Bulldog. Yeah.
why would people like let's just be broad here, and let's say like The Hill, Breaking Points, Gray Zone, Jimmy Dore, why wouldn't they cover this? Like, why would this not be something that was talked about?
It's a good question. And not only that, Tommy, I'll do you one better. When the story broke, and I was awake at 3:10 a.m. in April, and when I saw, and it was, by the way, when Florida Bulldog posted the story, the only ones that they reported, like I said, were Gray Zone and West State, but they didn't report it till much later. But not only that, I sent this information to Jimmy Dore. I sent it to Dave Smith. I sent it to Abby Martin. I sent it to ABC News, NBC, you name it. I emailed more people regarding this than anybody else, because what I was holding was the biggest breakthrough in all of 9/11. Now we have foreign and domestic intelligence aiding and providing support, not to 9/11 hijackers, because they didn't know they were planning 9/11 that we know of. But what they do know is that these two men were Al-Qaeda. So it doesn't matter, because these guys were bad guys. They had links to the USS Cole bombing in October of 2000. But here you have two Al-Qaeda people inside the United States, and they didn't tell the FBI or the State Department, not until August of 2001, which is much too late. So they had this information, and they withheld it. Now, the question is why? But now, what's really demoralizing, Tommy, is that nobody wanted to touch this story. And I'm thinking, like, all right, the old media will, because they've been criticizing the intelligence services and the CIA for years. A pin drop, my jaw hit the floor. And, it was demoralizing. I took off a week. I was so disappointed. And I said, wow, I can't believe nobody wants to cover this. And, Aaron Monte and Max Blumenthal, Gray Zone, I got to give them a lot of credit. Kid Clarenberg, Branko Marcitek, only those guys. That's it. And, it's bad when Russia today.
Were you did you think of getting in touch with like antiwar.com, like Dave DeCamp, any of these guys?
They knew about it only because I was posting nonstop for months about it. I mean, I do videos every once in a while on it. But when the story broke, I did a 3-part series, read along, just to show, because they talked to, I think it was 15 people, Donald Canastraro. And what I did was a 3-day series. It's 22 pages. So I did 7 pages a day, showing people who they were talking to. And if I could recognize what they were talking about, I could recognize who that person was. So I can name them and stuff like that. But that's what I did for 3 days. And then I did a podcast episode with, of course, Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Schaefer from Able Danger. And we did a podcast episode based on the Canastraro and Operation Encore files. So it wasn't like, this was a periodical report that I was doing. I was trying to bring as much attention to it as possible. But again, I'm a small name. I don't even think Dave Smith knows I exist. So it's not like, Jimmy Dore and everybody.
Dave Smith Dave Smith isn't the easiest person to get in touch with. Scott had contacted us a few months ago, probably last year. I think it was last year, actually. And my wife does administrative work for people. And so Scott got in touch with us and said, hey, can you do me a favor? Can you handle Dave Smith's emails? Just to get him like pointed in the right direction. My wife was like, yeah, I'll do that. Yeah, I'll help out. And so she was going to do it for free. Wasn't going to charge nobody anything. So Scott emailed Dave Smith with my wife, like CC'd into it. And Dave Smith never responded. because he doesn't have anybody checking his emails. So if you're emailing Dave Smith, you're going to have a really hard time getting in touch with him.
Well,
'Cause he
I'm
does.
actually messaging him through Twitter. That's all I have. I don't have his email. So
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. He's not great at checking his messages anywhere.
right.
So yeah, you're gonna have a really hard time getting in touch with him because he's not got no organization. He's a comedian, for God's sake. He's not organized. Like,
Right.
so-
No. And I expect him to be inundated with messages and whatnot. So he's a popular guy.
probably, yeah. Yeah.
The only reason why I messaged him because he was a big platform. I want a big platform to talk about it.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm also not going to be, I'm not going to reach out to Tucker Carlson or Tim Pool or anybody from CNN over this, individually. But I did message the news agencies regarding it. I knew they're not going to touch this, but you never know until you try. So, but nobody touched it, and it's amazing because here we have evidence. Now it's a fact that
Well,
they
so
were doing criminal
we-
activities into the United States.
So give us a really like as best of a summary as you can give us on these 22 pages. Because I'm not gonna lie, I'm terrible at listening to other podcasts. Since I started working locally, I don't have as much time as I did when I was
Yeah.
over the road. When I was over the road, I was all by myself. I had nothing else to do other than listen to other podcasts and just absorb as much information as possible. And now that I'm home every night, it's like I just don't have that
Mhm.
time, that ability. It's just not there anymore. So give us like the best like breakdown of these 22 pages.
All right. Well, I mean, we talked about the CIA monitoring Khalid al-Mihdhar and Waqar Hazmi in the United States, and that the Saudi intelligence division had operatives like Omar al-Bayoumi, Fahad al-Tamari, Muhammad al-Jarrah, that were in charge of the overall operation and keeping contact with these people, trying to get them to open up and say what they're doing inside the United States. There was also another issue within the Canastraro document, and that was that the Saudi government itself has openly denied, even with these revelations, but they have not any opinion about the latest revelations in Canastraro documents because they can't deny it any longer. And one such promising incident that could be further investigated on is that Muhammad al-Jarrah had two individuals, and Muattab al-Sudari and Adel al-Sadhan, who actually were from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia that were inside the United States in 99. And that the FBI had a source inside the King Fahd Mosque, which is where Fahad al-Tamari is the imam that was given that job by Musa al-Jarrah. And that's where Khalid al-Mihdhar went to when they arrived inside the United States. Well, according to this source, he overheard a phone call between Fahad al-Tamari and somebody in Malaysia. And this is December of 99. This is before the meeting. This is before Khalid al-Mihdhar and Waqar would come to the United States. In that, the source said that he overheard that whoever was talking on the phone, which we later found out was Khalid, who's currently in Guantanamo Bay. His real name is Tawfiq bin Attash. He's the mastermind of the Clair bombing, allegedly. He actually told Fahad al-Tamari that expect two brothers, not literally, but two Islamic brothers, to come to the mosque. This information was relayed to the FBI, and that when they came to the United States, it was a Tunisian cab driver by the name of Khalid Ben-Mari that met them at the airport and drove them to the mosque. Now, the 9/11 Commission even would state, Dieter Snell's leading staffer, he actually says that for the first 2 weeks, we had no idea where they went. Well, that might have been true, but we do know now because they stood at a hotel room afforded by Fahad al-Tamari. But he knew they were Al-Qaeda. He knew what they were coming in, and the FBI knew, the NSA knew, and the CIA knew. So now, with all this information at the disposal of the CIA and the Saudi intelligence and the NSA, you'd think they would tell the FBI, hey, keep a watch out for these two guys. They're dangerous. They're Al-Qaeda. It's not like these two men had suspicious links. They were Al-Qaeda, and they were coming from a high-level meeting in Malaysia. Well, it just so happens they were received by the cab driver, dropped them off. And then after 9/11, the FBI actually investigated Khalid Ben-Mari and showed him 30 photographs, 19 of the hijackers. and told him, "Can you pick out the two men that you picked up?" He picked out two photographs, and it was Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi. And then he put him back in. Would you believe that the FBI killed this investigation? And the order came from the director himself, Robert Mueller. And not only that, I'll do you one better. They deported Kwame back to Tunisia. End of story. So now they can't say that, yeah, this guy who picked out al-Mihdhar and al-Hazmi drove them to the Saudis. Now, why? Why do you do this? Well, it's a cover-up for the Saudi kingdom. But it wasn't that the FBI did this alone. They got orders from the U.S. federal government because the Saudi cover-up began on the day of 9/11 and the investigation board. And at the end of the Canastraro documents, one of the biggest revelations of all, the CIA knew about Omar al-Bayoumi even in the mid-90s. Like, this is huge because Omar al-Bayoumi's been in the country for years. So that means why would they have an open file on him? I can understand the FBI does because of criminal activities. Why does the CIA have a file on him?
Mm.
Why?
Yeah, they don't act within the country.
Yeah, and it just so happens that Omar al-Bayoumi was actually investigated by British authorities when he fled the United States, and he went to the United Kingdom. A Scotland Yard investigated him, and what they found in his house, Tommy, was, oh my God, incrimination galore. So they found his notebook, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in the notebook was a picture of a drawing of a plane, the outlines of the dimensions of the plane, how much fuel it would hold, and dimensions of a direction that was similar to the directions and the technical analysis of how long it would take from a plane to get from point A to point B. Point A, point B was Dulles International, and point B was the Pentagon.
Yeesh.
The
and
FBI.
Did he consider how much fuel was burned in between? Did he do all that?
Yeah, they did their homework regarding how much a plane can hold, how much fuel it will hold. Well, that was the whole point of taking planes from the East Coast to West Coast.
Did he consider? Did he sit there? Did it show the configuration of how much fuel would be burned between Dulles and the Pentagon?
No, it actually, all it did was basically, it was coordinates of the direction. So in other words, this information would be given to the muscle hijackers, because then they could begin to hijack the plane if they went over a certain point in time or a certain monument, because on the notebook were certain monuments that the plane would pass. And what the FBI figured out and Scotland Yard figured out was that this is where the hijacking began, because they would go over this point, and
Gotcha.
so that's what it was about. And they asked him, what's this about? He goes, no, I just like drawing planes.
Yeah. It's just like, if a train left the station at 10 a.m. and it traveled so far, how long would it take it to get this many miles, blah, blah, blah.
By the way, not to leave you half wanting, Omar al-Bayoumi was actually very well known to our good friend Bandar bin Sultan, the U.S. Saudi ambassador to the Clinton and Bush administrations.
Shit. Okay.
How about
that? So, have there been any? Have you seen anything from anyone, even if it's not the mainstream media? Like, has anybody from the FBI addressed this, or has the CIA addressed this, or anybody talking about this at all?
Depressing, but no. I did reach out to Anthony Schaefer, and he knows Donald Canastraro. And I've tried to contact Donald Canastraro, and on LinkedIn, I requested him as a friend, and he accepted. And I messaged him. You can only, if you're not a member, you can't talk freely. So I'm a member, but that's a premium member, by the way. But I gave him a note, and I said, look, Mr. Canastraro, my name is Adam. I gave him a note and said, I think you're fantastic. We should talk about this. I think it's huge, and people need to know about this. But I haven't gotten a response. And I think it's basically that Canastraro is being very careful here, because one, I'm sure he's inundated with people asking him questions. And two, he is implying the dangerous intelligence service, CIA and Saudi intelligence. So it's not like he's going to get killed or anything. He's a public figure.
Mm.
So it's basically, I think he's being careful for now,
So is
waiting
Kennedy.
before. Well, that's because he's a president. Canastraro is an investigator. I mean, there's some light on him, but it's not like they'll only kill you if they feel that talking or manipulating you doesn't work.
Well,
They don't want to become too
they're
obvious.
more likely to drive you to suicide than they are to
Yeah, right. The
actually
pressure. Turn up the
physically kill
pressure.
you. Yeah, yeah. So
Right.
now, all right. So you keep bringing it. You brought up the UK. You brought obviously we're talking CIA, FBI, and then also Saudi Arabia. So I just one of the things that keeps popping in my head that I have to ask you about is how much of this was a Five Eyes mission and not necessarily a U.S., Saudi Arabia, UK mission.
Well, there's no evidence to suggest that UK was involved. The Five Eyes.
Because well, all right, so like let me explain to you what I mean by that, because I look at the Five Eyes like kind of like agreement as something outside of government, something outside of the nation state, that it's more of a global intelligence arm than it is like several national intelligence arms. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That they kind of like develop their own little thing going on there. So I don't even know if that's worthwhile to speak on, but that's kind of the way I view it.
Oh, I would say that it was a few intelligence services that basically were, I'm talking pre-intelligence, monitoring these people. And I think it was Israel, Saudi Arabia, and the United States governments. That's only because the after effects of 9/11, these three countries were the most beneficial of the terrorist incident for various reasons, geopolitically, religiously. Saudi Arabia sees this as a elimination of the Shia minority countries that would be a threat to the Arab community at whole, the Wahhabi countries that want to be the predominant country. Saudi Arabia is also a strong ally to the United States. Israel sees it as a weakening of its preconceived enemies, to get rid of dictators like Saddam Hussein, who they wanted gone in the 80s. The destruction of Afghanistan, who they were feared that the Taliban would take over. Well, they took over anyway because the United States left. The destruction of Libya, who they find that Muammar Gaddafi was a threat to unify the Arab League, and also the destruction of Syria, Bashar al-Assad, but that failed. That was a failure of the CIA and Israeli and Saudi intelligence. The only country that was left unscathed for now is Iran. But about that quote that Wesley Clark's, goes to the Pentagon,
Yeah.
7 countries in 5 years or something like that. Well,
Right.
that was almost true. I mean, it wasn't 7 countries, but it was close. It was 5.
They hit a lot of those countries.
Yeah, they did. They hit a lot of those countries. The only country was Iran.
Iran's the only one. Yeah.
The only one. But Syria was a failed operation, and that was a CIA operation too, called Timber Sycamore. To fund the radical Islamists against the dictator Assad in the hopes of overthrowing him. Well, what this wanted to do was that Israel had a foreign policy guideline called the Yinon Plan, the Yinon Plan, which basically was the destabilization of Arab countries, specifically Lebanon, Syria, and Iraq, in the hopes of having Western-backed governments that would be favorable to Western decadence and the lifestyle and also politics. And they
how
almost
would
got it.
How would it benefit Saudi Arabia, Israel? How would it benefit them if the United States was weakened by an attack like this?
Well, the United States were weakened. What do you mean? The government would be? No, the people would be. I mean, we are suffering.
I would think that the acknowledgement around the world that this type of attack happened in the United States would weaken the government, at least globally. They wouldn't have as much pull because people would see them as vulnerable. like this opens a vulnerability within the government, their inability to stop an attack of this nature. Why would countries like Saudi Arabia and Israel that depend so much on US funding and US support, how would that benefit? How would they benefit?
I would submit to you that it actually strengthened the country government itself and the intelligence services.
Well, I think it strengthened them over the United States citizens. I don't think it strengthened the United States globally.
No, that's the point, was to have far-ranging powers. In November of 2001, give you an example, the White House counsel, led by John Yoo and David Attenborough, who was a personal lawyer to Dick Cheney, and Alberto Gonzales, they rewrote the memorandum regarding captured enemy combatants. For example, if a person who is deemed a terrorist by the Department of Justice, he would actually have to have conducted a felony in the process of conducting, an act of terrorism. He would actually be tried inside the United States and afforded the Geneva Convention, where, you can't torture, and he has to go through, process of laws. Well, Dick Cheney actually come up with a great idea using White House counsel to override that. And what he used was the pretext of not allowing the Department of Justice to label you the terrorist, but the President of the United States. And so he overrid the Attorney General, he overrid the Department of Justice, and actually broke, constitutional law, law regarding who's constituted as a terrorist. Well, the Secretary of State, Colin Powell, the National Security Advisor, Condoleezza Rice, and the Attorney General, John Ashcroft, heard this. They ran to the White House, but it was much too late. Bush was on vacation in November. Just so happens that left Cheney alone, because Cheney's the more astute politician. Bush is a walkover. So Cheney basically said, this is no longer an issue. This was authorized by the president, but it wasn't. Yeah, Bush approved, but this was an idea by Cheney and the lawyers. But it was actually an idea by the neoconservatives, who are basically just, Israeli dual citizens and stuff like that. And what they did was they gave the president war powers, expanded it. And not only that, the CIA, led by the Counterterrorism Center, Cofer Black, who's the director, and as well as George Tenet, the DCI, held a private meeting with George Bush. In that, he says, well, now the gloves need to come off. We're going to play dirty because we've been attacked dirty. But you need to give us, you need to lessen the restraints, which was basically the Frank Church hearings, if you're familiar with those. In 1977, Frank Church, the senator, actually brought to light CIA criminality, and CIA, basically a lot of the affordabilities of wide-ranging operations were
that's whenever just for the listeners to understand, the church hearings were when people started finding out about Operation Mockingbird, MK Ultra. That's where all this stuff came out. That's the church hearings is where we got all this information. A lot of this had to do with the Warren Commission and the failures of the Warren Commission in the early 70s. The church hearings were meant to correct the wrongs of the CIA up until the 70s. And so a lot of the things that you'll hear about nowadays where it concerns these black ops, whether it's Operation Mockingbird, Operation MK Ultra, or any of these others, Operation what was the other one? I can't even think of it right now off the top of my head. Anyway, Blue Beam, that was another one that came out. So all these things came out during the church hearings. So the only reason you know about these operations of the 50s and 60s is because of the church hearings of the late 70s. Sorry, right. Go ahead. I just wanted people to understand what you were talking about.
Right. And what happened was basically Cofer Black almost presented a perfect presentation.
Northwoods was the other one I was thinking.
Yeah, Northwoods was the other one.
Yeah.
And Cofer Black actually presented a kill list of people, CIA kill list, and had a long list of names who they were going to kill without even bringing these people to trial. And Bush approved. And not only that, Bush approved for everything. The CIA he expanded the War Powers Act, expanded the CIA's availability to conduct rendition and torture operations. And that began the huge exodus from Afghanistan and Pakistan, Libya, countries that, warlords, they're just picking people off and saying, yeah, this guy's Al Qaeda, and they get a bounty for it. And what happened was at Guantanamo Bay, we had over 890 prisoners. I think currently right now at Guantanamo, it's 24. So a lot of these people weren't even charged. I mean, one
Mm.
guy there is actually not charged with anything. He's called a forever prisoner. His name is Abu Zubaydah. He was the first alleged Al Qaeda operative to be captured. In 2006, the CIA basically said, "You're not even Al Qaeda. Nobody important. Sorry, we tortured you, but we can't let you go because we can't allow for the world to know what we did to you." That's an actual quote.
Mm.
That's the CIA. So the
And,
CIA,
and some of these prisoners that they arrested and put in Guantanamo were like had the same names as other people, and they just arrested the wrong guy. It was like you share a name, you're John Smith. I mean, the equivalent of John Smith in Afghanistan. And well, you're a John Smith. We're just going to get you because it makes our job easier. So, and they knew this was happening. They were arresting these guys that had the same or similar names to people that they were actually searching for, and they were trying to mark their names off the list like, oh, we got this guy, we got this, and they didn't get any of these guys.
Right. And not only, and also just to expand on your inquiry, was that the NSA also expanded their powers too. So Bush actually didn't know much about Michael Hayden, who's the director of the NSA, and they met. And this was a big issue with the PBS actually did a documentary called The Spy Factory. And there's a great book by James Bamford, who wrote about the NSA. In immediate months after 9/11, the NSA was allowed to actually eavesdrop on American phone calls. And this was actually expanded under the Obama administration. The Electronic Foundation Frontier basically found out that the NSA had instituted their own hard drives and their own listening devices in a room in San Francisco. In fact, there was an AT&T technician. His name is Marc Klein, and he saw this room. It was I want to say it was 613A, and he never saw this room before. He says, "Oh, it's a room he's a technician." So he said, "What the hell is this room?" And he didn't even have a key for it. Well, he found out that in this room was actually the NSA's own mainframe and connecting to the AT&T clientele and also to every single phone call
I remember
out the West
this
Coast.
story. Yeah, I remember this story.
Huge,
It was
huge.
crazy. It
Well,
was one of the
huge.
craziest stories I've ever heard.
And not only that, the Obama administration gave the NSA full approval to go to wireless cells like AT&T and T-Mobile and collect everyone's data without a warrant.
Yeah.
But this was an idea proposed by Bush. So that's who got strengthened. And I'm just talking about the NSA, CIA, let alone, private military contractors like Halliburton and, Raytheon and Boeing, who got, mass production of bullets and bombs and missiles from two wars that were based on, Iraq was based on a lie.
You know who I worry most about?
What's
like
that?
you know who I worry most about, and I'm not trying to undercut you, but
Sure.
it's something that nobody ever talks about. It's an agency no one ever talks about. No one ever speaks about it. I've looked, I've Googled, I've tried to find information. You can't find anything on the DIA.
Oh, yes.
Like, what are they doing? Like, I remember, like, and what really struck me with that, with the DIA, what really struck me with that was when they were impeaching Trump for the Ukraine phone call, and they made the comment that who was it was one of the generals that was like the head of the DIA at the time, and he was like the connect to Ukraine, and he said, "We've already laid out our Ukraine policy." Wait, who are you? Like, wait, hold on. Like, wait, hold on. Hold on. And everybody just let it slide. And I was kind of like, that's like not right. Like, something's off here. Like, who's this guy? And why is he saying this? And why does he get to decide that we get to impeach the president of the United States for making a phone call inquiring about corruption because it goes against the foreign policy of the defense agency. What? Wait, you're the Defense Intelligence Agency. Like, you don't set foreign policy. What the fuck is happening right now? And nobody questioned it.
Yeah, no, nobody. You know what's funny is that the only time I ever brought up the DIA was that when I interviewed Anthony Schaefer regarding the Able Danger program.
And then they showed up to my house and told me to stop talking about them, so I did.
And for as big as the DIA is, this is miraculous to add to your question. For as big, and they get, I think, triple the funding than the CIA does.
Yeah.
So this is like the Pentagon's intelligence arm.
And they're setting foreign policy.
Oh, yeah.
They are the ones that are setting foreign policy. They
it's
admitted
amazing
it.
nobody knows about them.
And there's
So
no information anywhere. You can't find out anything about these people or what they're doing.
I don't even think the only book that I know of is Operation Dark Heart. Again, Anthony Schaefer regarding Able Danger and the DI. It's the only book I know that speaks about it. Only one.
Yeah. I find it so remarkable. Nobody ever brings it up.
Yeah, nobody.
Everybody's like NSA, CIA, and I'm like, what about the DIA? Those guys seem really dangerous to me.
Yeah,
like there's something about those guys. I don't trust these fucking guys.
Yeah, yeah. The DI in 19 just a little bit of context. Also, in 1996, it was the DIA under General Hugh Shelton and Peter Schoonmaker that brought up the idea of Able Danger being a metadata mining program. To show you how big they were, they actually didn't need anybody. Right, the CIA created the Alex station, the Bin Laden station, with the FBI, the NSA. The DIA said, "To hell with all that. We can run everything on our own, but we're going to have the Land Information Warfare's Activity Division to handle the metadata, mining program."
Right,
and they just ran. The funding came from them. The whole thing came from them, and they only needed like 6 people at the time to work. And I interviewed 2 of them, Eric Kleinsmith and Anthony Schaefer. And it just goes to show you the amount of data that they got through open source and closed source information. If that's information not procured from the internet, open source is. What they got was 3.5 terabytes on 2 terrorist groups inside the United States. One of them being Mohammed Atta in 1999, Marwan al-Shayzi the Hamburg cell, and the cell run by Omar Abdul Rahman, who was inside the United States that was later on convicted for his role in the Landmarks plot. Now, this is a huge ordeal, right? These 2 groups. Well, the Southern Operations Command, the lawyers, basically said you have to destroy this information because we consider them American citizens, even though they weren't born here, but because they had U.S. visas, they were considered citizens. Would you figure that in 2006, the Senate committee that was investigating Able Danger, well, one of the Department of Defense had one of their lackeys named William Dugan, who had no idea what was going on. He just went before the Senate committee and asked him, why did the Pentagon lawyers basically say that this information said that Mohammed Atta was a U.S. citizen? Is he? And he stammered and he didn't know what to say, but he said, no, he's not a citizen. Well, if he wasn't a citizen, why is it that they had to destroy this information? Because according to the laws under, it's a shield protection for American citizens, that it only be held for 30 days. And if there's no criminality involved or you can't arrest them or something like that, this data has to be destroyed. But because they were not American citizens, but they were deemed American citizens because of their visas, they were to destroy the information. But they weren't. They weren't American citizens. And that comes from an official from the Department of Defense. So who told them to destroy that information? Well,
it makes you wonder. It makes you wonder if these guys were acting as double agents.
I wonder
if they were working for both governments, and they did so with ill intent. And the whole reason to cover it all up is to hide how fucking stupid government is, right?
That's a fear. The fear is to know that the government is not this big, omniscient, omnipresent, we can't do anything about it, so powerful. No, they're human just like us.
Yeah, but,
They make errors.
it's just like so much of this to me just seems like incompetence, that it's like, oh, we have to hide all our contacts with
Mm,
these people to hide how actual incompetent we are, because they were under our nose the entire time.
sure. That's the fear is that the people don't want to do anything. They want to believe they're doing something. So they'll talk about it on the internet. Hey, the government's corrupt. Well, whoopee do. Yeah, okay, the
Yeah,
government's corrupt. What are
yeah,
we going to do about it?
yeah. Big
Right?
surprise.
Now we
Yeah,
have to do something
that's
about it.
nothing new. Like, all right.
Tommy, isn't it the problem? But I mean, I say this ad nauseum, but I love this quote. E. Martin Schatz is a JFK researcher, and it's a quote I try to live by. But it's a quote that talks about the problem that we have. It's called On Belief versus Knowledge, where I won't bore you with the whole quote, but the basis is the people are allowed to believe anything, but to know nothing, because if the
Mm.
people know
Oh
something,
yeah, I
and
know
that
this quote.
realizes them, hey, we have to do something,
Yeah.
or else you're complicit with your silence.
Mm.
So, I mean, yeah, all right. I may know a little bit. I don't know nothing, I may know a little bit. What do I do with it? Well, I can't. I wish I had more people behind me so we can do something. I'd love to go to the steps of the Senate and basically say, hey, we need to show, hey, for example, George Tenet basically ran a legal operation inside the United States. We have proof now. Well, I could be seen as a lone nut
Mm.
and put me in Elmer's psychiatric ward.
Right.
This guy's a nut job. But if you can get 10,000, 100,000, 100,000, I'm not even asking for a million, 100,000 people. Can you imagine? 100,000 people at the steps of the U.S. Senate, instead of going there with Alex Jones and, guys with bullhorns and trying to break windows, you go there with information with the Canastraro document. Holy crap, we're going to hold somebody accountable.
Yeah.
But it now comes down to, hey, listen, I don't want to know too much. And yeah, I
Right.
may want to believe in the
That's
conspiracy.
what I'm starting at. That's what I'm starting to concern myself with, though,
Mhm.
is like I'm starting to think, like, the more you and I talk about this stuff, is like, how much of it did the compartmentalization that the
Mm,
CIA interjected into the agency, and the way it compartmentalized and everything, and made everything a need to know basis, how much of that came back to bite him in the ass? Because this guy is investigating the guy that this guy is doing business with and collecting information from.
mm,
And you see what I'm saying? And it
mm.
could all just like implode in their face, because people always think they're smarter than they actually are. They think they're smarter than they actually are, and they can cajole and create these big elaborate plans that do nothing but like explode right in their face.
Ignorance is really the real virus here, when it comes to activism. And, we don't do much street activism anymore because, the culture has changed. The internet has taken over. People don't really get out their house much. And street
Well, I mean,
activists,
you do if you're burning down businesses and
you call that activism?
setting fires to police
I call that
stations.
taking advantage, right?
No, that's activism nowadays.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I mean,
Or
I mean,
or you're chopping the genitals off of children in public.
right.
There's that. There's
You know,
all the
or you're trying to, repel the Second Amendment, right? I mean,
right, right,
it's amazing what people they're freely giving away their rights, just
right.
by doing this. But yeah, I mean, you're right. There is not much in the way of real activism in this country.
Hmm.
And heaven forbid if we can get enough people to basically bring about the attention of criminality to the very institutions that we always complain about online, hey, maybe we could change things. But as long
The
as we keep,
problem
lying to
is
ourselves.
the problem is
Hmm,
people like you and I, like the people that keep up with this type of stuff. When we're not keeping up with this type of stuff, what are we doing? We're working.
well, that's a good question.
We're
That's a good
raising families. We're
Right.
working.
Mm,
Where do we have time to do anything? And
right.
that's what they count on. And that's why they keep depleting the value of the dollar, because the less the dollar's worth, the longer you have to work to make that dollar, the less time you have to pay attention to what the fuck they're doing.
That's a really solid point, and they know this too. They know that you have a regular life. They know you have a job, probably menial, barely getting by. You can't sacrifice that. Your job here's about you creating activism against, the intelligence state or the government. Hey, we can't have that pressure. We'll have to
Right.
let you go.
Yeah,
Then you have to make a decision.
your bank will freeze your account.
Right. I'm just,
Yeah, I mean,
other
yeah,
things
your
too at
bank,
play. Right,
you
right.
can't access your now you can't access your funds and pay your bills. You can't you no longer have a job because you're an enemy of the state. Like, and all these things are coming down on you the because of the bureaucracy that has created this authoritarianism, like outside of the actual government.
Yeah, you talked about this earlier before we were talking, press record, in that when it comes to how we can hold people accountable and what we could do to speak out more about it and stuff. I think I think what the sacrifice is going to need to be made here.
Yeah.
And how much of a sacrifice can we make realistically?
Right.
For people with families, I would say it's very little. And it sucks because now there's
maybe that's the wrong way to think about it. So it's like, I don't know if you've ever like trained jujitsu, right? Have you ever trained in jujitsu?
A little bit. I trained in MMA in 2007, but
okay. So one of the first things they teach you is if somebody locks on a rear naked choke on you, what do they tell you? Turn into the choke.
Right, turn into the choke.
Yeah. Where the pain is, that's where you go.
Exactly.
You go to where the pain is.
Right.
Right. And so even without getting like super religious here, but this is kind of like, isn't this kind of like the story of what Christ did? Right. Like, and biblically, like Jesus sacrificed everything for the greater good, right? For the benefit of the future. And so maybe the lesson is to stop worrying about what you're losing and worrying about what tomorrow's generation is gaining from your sacrifice.
That's a big hurdle for a person to make, an individual.
Well,
right?
especially nowadays.
Yeah.
Especially nowadays, because everybody is so autonomous nowadays. Yeah. There's no community anymore. It's easy to sacrifice for people that you're connected to, right?
Right. Yeah. Good point.
But the community has been destroyed. Everything's online, and we don't even have real communities online. We're just random people talking at each other, right? Yeah. And so, and this is why it's so toxic to look at Twitter, because people don't even talk to people like they're real people. Like we don't even recognize the humanity in the person that you're speaking to on Twitter, right? And so, but how much time have you spent with your neighbor, right? And so, if you're living in the world today, everything is so disconnected. So who are you sacrificing for? Only those in your immediate circle. Who's in your immediate circle? Well, people are not having children. They're lucky if they're even getting married. And so it's just you. So all your sacrifices are based upon your own future and have nothing to do with the greater good of anybody around you.
I think this is a really underestimated point that you raised. And that just leads to the additional stresses one has to make in order to basically look at the future. Like I always say to a friend of mine who has 2 sons, he hates where the future's going. And I said, you're pretty much selfish. And he says, why? I said, you had kids. If you don't like what the future is going and you have kids, you're telling them that, hey, I'm going to ruin the future, but you're going to have to clean up the mess. So, and we joke about that. But I mean, and it's true. I mean, if you're not going to do anything about the future and you're basically complicit in silence, like I said before, well, then you're just as guilty as the perpetrator of the crime. So what happens is that if you have created a future, is where you talk to your point, you want to make those, you want to have a better future for them. You're going to have to make that sacrifice now to make sure that the future is better for them. It goes back to your point that you raised. And I think this is something that's often not talked about, Tommy. And, I think we need to have this discussion. And you're right about the psychology of of society today. I see it all the time. And I work in the field of people because I'm a concierge security guard. I deal with large groups of people. I get back online and it's a different world. There's apathy involved here. There's sociopathy. And I studied forensic psychology when I went to City College of New York in Manhattan in the early 90s. And I could see how people react to one another. There's more of a way of this veil of this thin veil of anonymity, even though I don't know you, Tommy, but I wouldn't tell you to go to hell or drop dead, in a face-to-face meeting. But maybe on Twitter that might have happened because I don't have to face you. I don't see a human face, in other words.
Right.
I don't
Yeah.
see a person. When you're standing in front of that person, it's a different story. You're not being a condescending person. You're not being a mean person. But I think this is a great point you raised, because with the internet, like I said, this, the transparency of anonymity, people think they're safe. They can easily become very antisocial or abrasive even. So this apathy at play here is more pronounced. And you're absolutely right. And I'd love to have that conversation in a future podcast, where I think the psychology has basically reshaped what people think. I have to wonder if that's the case with mass shootings these days. I wrote an article 3 years ago about how the internet and psychotropic drugs are playing a role in, hurting the psychology of youth, for example. Every doctor these days prescribes you, either opioids or some type of psychotropic drug, because they don't want to put in the effort of having a communal relationship with you to talk about your problems. Here, have some Prozac, here's a 50 milligrams and take 2 a day.
Right.
No, have a chat with somebody, have a seat. A lot of these mass shooters, not to go off tangent and go off the point, but a lot of these mass shooters, they just want to, talk to somebody. Have a conversation.
Yeah, they don't have any relationships.
No.
Nothing meaningful.
None.
Yeah.
None.
And that's what causes them to be nihilistic.
Yeah.
There's nothing meaningful in their life.
Yeah. Well, I want, and that to go back to 9/11, because not to lose the point.
Hold on. I want to counter a point you made earlier, though. You were talking about your friend talking about bringing kids in the world, right? So I've had the opposite conversation with a friend of mine who said, I'm 55, 60 years old now, never had kids because I didn't want to bring him into this shitty world. And I said, the only reason the world is getting so shitty is because good people like you stopped having kids.
Oh, that's a good point. That's a good point. That's a good point.
Only the fucking shitty people are having children now. And so it turned everything shitty for everybody.
Yeah. Well, listen, that's a solid point. If we don't have good people, have good kids, well, we're left with, the bad people.
Right.
So that's a solid point. Can't argue against. But yeah, I think your point is well made and well met. It's something I'm very much interested in these days.
Yeah.
To talk about that. But bringing back activism in with 9/11 and, with the intelligence service, well, isn't that what this podcast was about? Well, guess who did almost just that? Bring up the attention. Well, it just so happens it's a congressman running for president, Vivek Ramaswamy, isn't he?
He's not a congressman. He's not.
Oh, what is he again?
He's a businessman who dropped out of business and decided he was going to run for president.
Oh, he's not a congressman.
No, he's not a politician.
Anymore.
He's never been in politics.
But he's running as a Democrat.
No, he's running as a Republican.
Oh, he is.
Yeah.
Boy, my mind is shot.
Yeah, he's running. He's running against Trump and DeSantis, Nikki Haley. He's running as a Republican.
Oh, I thought he was running as a Democrat. Oh, thank you for the correction.
Yeah, he's 37 years old. He's a second generation. His parents were born in India and they moved here. So I guess he's first generation. So he was born here. His parents moved here and he was born here. He started a biotech company and made billions of dollars developing drugs and selling them. And part of his claim to fame is He's written a couple of books, one of which is called Woke Inc., which came out a few years ago, discussing how kind of the woke ideology has infiltrated big business. And one of the things he's been talking about in the last couple of months is actually that the government has lied to the American people about the events of 9/11. Not that the government was involved, but that they are not revealing the entire truth. And his argument is, and I tend to agree with him on this, though I don't trust him on everything. His argument is that we're adults. We can handle the truth. Just tell us what happened.
Right.
Like quit hiding the Saudi influence. Quit trying to protect your buddies. Give us the information. And that's kind of his whole argument. Now, they've tried to twist this and turn this in several different directions because he's made bad analogies. And I agree that the analogies were bad, right? So he made a comment. They were talking about January 6th and the pipe bombs and people that were carrying guns on January 6th. Apparently there were a few in DC that were carrying guns, and he's like, yes, but there were obviously federal agents in the crowd, right? And if on 9/11 there were federal agents on the plane, don't the American people have the right to know how many, where they were located, and what they were doing? And so then they tried to spin that argument around on him and say, why are you arguing that there were federal agents on the planes during 9/11? Are you saying that the federal government did that? That's not what he was saying. It was a bad analogy. I don't think the analogy was worthwhile and should have been used that way. I understand what he was trying to say, but at the same time, he should have known the way the media interacts with candidates nowadays, especially Republican candidates that are anti-elite, are going to not be treated fairly. And that's basically what has happened. But he has brought up some decent questions, and he's one of the only people that have at this high of a stage brought forth the engagement that, hey, we're not being told the entire truth. Why don't you just tell us the truth at this point? It's been 20 years, give us the information.
Yeah, listen, thank you very much for that, because I didn't know too much about the man, obviously. And the only how I knew about him was because I actually saw a clip on Twitter and actually talked about the Canastraro document, and my jaw hit the floor. And I said, who the hell is this guy?
Oh, did he?
Yeah, it's the only why I knew about him.
Wow.
And
interesting.
What happened was that he went on Tucker Carlson. And when you said you wanted
to he was on Dave Smith's show tonight. I saw that he was on tonight. I haven't watched it yet.
Vivek Ramaswamy?
Yeah, he was on Part of the Problem tonight. I saw it earlier.
Oh, wow, really? So
yeah.
Dave Smith on. He went
this is the second time he's been on Dave Smith's show.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know. Jeez, I'm ignorant regarding him. But I actually assumed that he was a congressman because he was running for president. But I just didn't put, I didn't do any background research. Only thing I knew about it was he went on Tucker Carlson and talked about, Saudi financing in the Canastraro document. And I was like, oh my God, a senator is actually talking about this. I think he's a senator. Oh my God. Yes. Yes. I remember being very excited. I said, all the hope is not lost.
No, he's not a senator, but he is running for president under the Republican ticket, and he's in second place behind Donald Trump. He's people are hearing him, especially if he's on Tucker. People are hearing him. So
yeah, sure. Yeah, I think he went on another show.
He's been on several.
He's
making his rounds. Yeah.
I want to say, if I want to, damn it, he went
on with Bill Maher.
He went on with Bill Maher.
Yeah, he did. He did an hour with Bill Maher.
Okay.
He's been on Breaking Points and The Hill. So he's making his rounds, and he's not keeping himself in friendly territory. He's going all over the place.
Right.
He's not afraid to engage and argue. And I mean, he's been on Glenn Beck several times, you know, so I mean,
Yeah, well, that's where I saw him, Glenn Beck.
yeah,
Okay,
he's made his rounds several,
right.
like all over the place, and he's not afraid to engage and argue and debate. It's
Well,
really
sure.
he's an interesting character. Yeah.
He's got to be. I mean, look, I saw that in context, the whole thing with Tucker Carlson, and I hate Tucker Carlson. So, but nevertheless, I said, wow, he's giving him a platform to talk about this stuff without the kook stuff involved. Holy cow, we're making progress, right? Now the next step is to really get more people behind us. And I said, if this guy can do it, boy, I mean, we can get enough people behind it. But right now it's not catching on. But at least somebody up there who's running for president actually brought attention to it. So he talked about
And
from what I saw,
guess who's giving him the most pushback?
Biden.
CNN and MSNBC.
I'm not surprised. I mean, these are the state. Listen,
The
I emailed
mouthpieces
them.
of the state.
I mean, well, sure. I mean, look, this is what's going to happen is that there's a part of the Republican Party that's off the Republican Party and creating their own,
Mm.
and that is the fight against the sold out mainstream media and corporations. But I think what's going to happen is that part of the Republican Party is going to become very perverted and twisted, and I'm hoping not. I got to be optimistic because I'm tired of being a hopeless pessimist. So, but nevertheless, at least somebody's fighting back and bringing truth to power, and I got to give him a lot of credit for that. I
Yeah.
mean, to talk about the CIA and talk about Saudi intelligence. I mean, he wasn't holding back. He went on Tucker Carlson and said, "Hey, it's basically CIA, Saudi running an illegal operation." And Tommy, as a kid, I was like, here you go.
You know what?
Oh,
I watch a lot of Tucker's episodes since Fox fired him. I've watched a lot of his episodes since that happened, and I enjoy them. I enjoy his interviews and his content. I did not see that one, so I will make sure that I am going to be watching that one here very soon.
oh, you'll be happy.
Yeah.
You'll be very happy. It was a very good talk by Vivek. A little bit of credit to Tucker, even though he actually didn't interrupt him and said, "Really, was going on?" He goes, "Yes, it was revelation that happened earlier this year, and the revelation was the Canastraro document."
Mm.
And also, I mean, I think it was 14 minutes. And boy, did he go all in. It was not like, all right, yeah, we'll get to it. No, he said the people need to know. The people, I was like, yes, oh my God, is this a dream? And I'm like, wow, all right. Now, see, he went on CNN.
You know what?
And
You know what I've noticed? I'm sorry.
no, go
Like things just keep getting said, and I'm just kind of like, oh, I got to say this real quick.
Go
I've
ahead.
noticed since Tucker's not on Fox anymore,
Mm.
he seems a lot. He's a lot less interested in interrupting, unlike me. I keep interrupting. But he seems a lot more interested in letting people get their views out. And I'm wondering if that time constraint on the show, like being on Fox and not just talking to somebody for an hour long,
Mm.
if that made a difference in the way that he conducts his interviews. Because
Okay, 2 points here.
I have noticed that
Yeah,
he's
no.
not interjecting near as much as he used to.
Well, you're not interrupting. You're adding more clarity to the context. And also, too, Tucker Carlson, yeah, I would agree, because he's not constrained by commercial breaks and the editors are basically, giving him a short amount of time. Now he has all the time to work. Right? So,
Yeah, I think we're actually getting to see that he's much more curious than we ever knew he was.
I'm hoping that's the case, where people can learn from their own mistakes and basically see the errors of their ways. I have to believe that because, we all make mistakes. But I'm also, like I said, there's a part of me where I'm a hopeless pessimist. I'm like, they never change, But you got to, even for someone like Tucker Carlson, who I don't like at all. Same thing for like, what's his name? The guy from CNN, the blonde, the white hair. I don't like him either. But going back to the point, Vivek Ramaswamy.
Oh, you're talking about the guy that worked for the CIA. What's his name?
Yes, I always forget his name. He was on 60 Minutes.
Yeah, it's not Jake Tapper. I keep wanting to
No,
say Jake Tapper. It's the other guy. I know you're talking about. Yeah, I know you're
no,
talking
yeah,
about.
hell, I don't trust him either. I don't
Short,
trust.
short, white
Yep,
hair. Yeah, yeah,
yep,
I know who you're
yep.
talking about.
So Tucker Carlson, can now open up the floodgates and basically relax a little bit, which helps in a conversation, right?
Mm,
Vivek Ramaswamy, after Tucker Carlson, after he said that, and he went on Fox too, and said that on Fox. So CNN invited him a week later, Tommy, and I forgot the name of the woman, and she says, "You don't believe that the state had anything to do with this operation, do you?" And he says, "Well, it's not about belief anymore. It's shown in the revelations itself." And what she did was very shrewd. So she couldn't really combat this because it was right in her face.
mm,
And she basically went off on a tangent. Well, you said this, and you said that, going back to your point where he has this, problem about saying things wrong and giving wrong analogies. She went right to that. That's all she did.
yeah,
And Vivek was on the defense now. He's like trying to make sense instead of bringing the point, which was, I basically, this is, all manipulated so that they wouldn't talk about this,
yeah,
right? To
yep,
hell with the original point. Let's obfuscate.
yeah.
They do it on purpose.
Well, and part of his problem is just inexperience. He's 37 years old. I
Sure.
mean,
Yeah.
if I were to jump out on that, like, I can talk with you all day long and have these
Sure.
great conversations, but I'm sure if they took this conversation and they put it out for 10 million people to watch, somebody would be able to pull something I said out of context and be like, this motherfucker, blah, 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 and because it's like some people
Mhm.
just have a way of communicating that's not necessarily meant for large monstrous audiences. It's just the way it is. And he's a young guy. He communicates very well as a business owner, as a CEO, that type of, but he's not used to the field that he's in right now. And he's in a strange land. So yeah, he's going to have some issues, and they are, like you said, they're obfuscating. They're giving him a hard time, and they're trying to redirect the commentary from the actual points that he's making to their narrative and make it about making him look like a wacko and a crazy dude. And like I said earlier, I don't necessarily agree with everything the guy has to say, but I think he's a pretty interesting guy.
Well, yeah, and also to add to your point, which is very sound, and I agree with it. It's like if you put Scott Horton there, right? He's not going to he's not going to get bogarted.
No, he's just
He'll
going to
go
cuss
right
him
for the
out.
throat. Yeah, he'll go right through. I mean,
He'll
for
hit him in the head
example,
with a skateboard.
right. And you know what's funny is he goes on Kennedy Nation, and they play these games too. And he's straight right to the point.
Oh yeah.
Now, I mean, look what he did to William Crystal, hardcore
Oh my God.
neocon himself. I mean, I knew it was going to be a slaughter. I didn't think it was going to be a rape as well. But I mean, that was a destruction of a man who has many years experience in geopolitics and is a shrewd individual himself.
I don't think he knew who Scott Horton was.
No, I don't think so either. You're not the only one to raise that point. I don't think he knew.
I think he walked into that just like some random libertarian.
Yeah.
This is one of those guys that dances naked on the stage thinking they're going to get a vote because they said they should be able to sell heroin to children, blah, blah, blah. And Scott Horton just wiped the floor with that dude.
It was magnificent.
Man. Oh,
I did a response video to that because I said, this is magnificent. This was music. And one person that really deserved it was him. He's the co-architect of the Iraq War through the Weekly Standard. I mean, he's also the co-founder of the Project for New American Century. Who else doesn't deserve that much? And he deserves far worse than that. But but if, like, in other words, like Vivek Ramaswamy, like you said, fresh young man, is not used to being, I guess, being criticized harshly by the American media.
Not in this way. Like, it's being in business is different than being in politics.
Yeah,
and
sure.
You can watch the way, the media talks to like goes after their political opponents, like Trump. He should have been more aware of the way he was delivering his message. He should have known that was going to come at him as well, but he just wasn't quite prepared enough for that attack that he was going to be under.
Right, for sure. But now it's lesson learned. And I tried to message him, Vivek Ramaswamy, but you need to be a premier member of Twitter. I'm not going to call it X, but you need to have a paid membership to Twitter to message another blue check or him, or him himself.
Mhm.
But I wanted to thank him and I wanted to, talk because he made a huge message relating about the Canastraro documents and the findings. And he says that I'm willing to learn from anybody. And I said, look, I wish the message would have went through, but I said to him, because you can message him on the public. And I said to him, I said, look, here's my channel and stuff. I'd love to talk to you about it. But, this guy gets millions of
Yeah.
freaking comments. I mean, he's, I'm a nobody.
Right.
But yeah,
Right.
but I would love to talk to that guy. And basically, if we could get to him, we can get to a senator, a real senator. And just today, Tommy, the Florida Bulldog released a report that said that with the latest findings, with the Canastraro document, with the Operation Encore files, we can actually call for a new investigation. And he interviewed former members of the Joint House Inquiry and the 9/11 victims' families, people from the Jersey Girls too. And
Mm.
they said it was a good idea because the 9/11 Commission Joint House Inquiry didn't have the information that we have now. We have new information, groundbreaking information. They didn't have
Right.
that. So we can really garner more attention to a new investigation. And I'm like, wow, he's right. I didn't even think of that. I said,
Right.
we probably could. But now, who would we get? Well, it just so happens one former member of the 9/11 Commission and the Joint House, John Lehman, basically said that he, now that he's retired, would basically help to co-chair this. And he says not to bring any officials that would be persuaded by politics. He goes, have retired people basically co-chair this commission and get the information that we have to investigate the CIA, Saudi intelligence. And I brought up the idea of the Israelis because now we have the Gerald Shea memorandum.
Mm.
That was presented, that shows the Israelis that were inside the United States through a DEA report, right? But
Mhm.
nobody talks about this. I mean, that's the most non-committed document about Israel in the world. There's not much about Israel. There's a lot about Saudi Arabia, not much with Israel. There's a lot of speculation. But this document is the biggest damning document because it shows the arrest records of all these people that were involved with the moving front companies, selling art to the DEA, to the FBI, and living right next door to most, if not all, of the people that were involved with 9/11 on the hijacking of the planes in San Diego, in LA, in Florida, New Jersey, New York. But nobody, Tommy, nobody talks about the Gerald Shea memo. I'm doing a chapter reading of it currently, chapter by chapter.
Are
I'm
you?
doing it on my YouTube channel to try and bring attention to it. Now, we could bring all this to an independent inquiry. Oh my God, the possibilities are endless.
Right.
But the thing is how to get that together. That's the point. And who would cover it?
Yeah.
Because we have to have some faith, Tommy, that the media will, right?
Well, somebody.
I mean,
I'll cover it. All you
good
got to
luck.
do, just tell me. I'll do it.
Tommy, I know you would. You probably run a 24-hour live channel.
Hey,
You
man.
and Scott Orden and Kyle Anzalone and those guys. Yeah, but you guys are the best in the country with the Libertarian Institute. But few and far between. We need more. We need the attention. And, we have to throw a lifeline out there and maybe can get like a CBS or an ABC to catch on. Somebody. And even if it's foreign press, Reuters or something, but at least somebody can say, hey, listen, this is a good idea. We have new information showing foreign and domestic intelligence that had information that probably could have stopped 9/11.
Mhm.
I mean, Thomas Drake was the biggest whistleblower of our lifetime since Daniel Ellsberg. He's the former senior executive of the NSA. And
Yeah.
even he says that the NSA had so much information about the hijackers that
Yeah.
they could have stopped 9/11 if they just shared it.
Right. Yeah.
And now, on top of this, you have the Israelis, the Saudis, the CIA. How much information we had? Do you know that they went before the commission and said, we didn't have much information? That's the conspiracy. They had it.
Yeah.
They had it. I'm currently uploading the 9/11 Commission edits, showing you they're committing perjury. Look, they're
Right.
lying straight up. We had it. They could have stopped 9/11, but they didn't.
Yeah.
And the question is why? The only thing lost now is specifics. What did they know, and why did they lie about it?
Well,
That's it.
I think it comes down to like what I was saying earlier. I think I think the way that the intelligence agencies were constructed, the whole compartmentalization aspect of the intelligence agencies has come back to bite them in the ass. Like that the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. And then nobody's sharing information. Nobody, and so it can bite you in the like it, and it's one of those things that can bite you in the ass either way, right? If they're sharing too much and they're like acting in congruence together too much, then they can conglomerate too much power. If they're not sharing enough, then they're missing these big stories. Like, so there's got to be this kind of agreement, amongst these guys to, hey, if I see something that's a threat to, I don't know, 3,000 people, I'm going to share it with somebody who can do something about it. But that's not the way it operates, because it's all a power struggle, and they're all operating under the influence of power and accumulating more power. And that's all it is. In my opinion, I don't think there's anything more to it than that. I think it was just like, no, this is our information for our uses. They can gather their own information for their own uses, because we're trying to get more money at the end of the year. And if they get more money, that takes away from the money that we can get at the end of the year.
I think you raise an interesting issue, and I think it also plays a part in the 9/11 Truth Movement, in that even within that movement, Tommy, they are compartmentalized. It's almost sectarian, if I could use that word very liberally, where they're very hostile to one another, more hostile than outsiders. So, like, there's a group of truthers that don't believe a plane hit the Pentagon in Shanksville. There's also a group within the Truth Movement that don't believe even in a plane. They believe CGI holograms. There's also a group within the Truth Movement that believe that the hijackers are alive. There's a group within the Truth Movement that believe that the Twin Towers were actually melted by, beams, energy beams, which Judy Wood proposes, but left steel and human flesh remain intact. And you have, there's other competing theories that contradict with each other. And so there's a fracturing of the movement within. So you have these small sects, these bands, as I said, these are sects within the movement itself, and they're competing with one another. So in other words, the truth movement is about movement, moving toward the truth. Well, they haven't been doing that for the last, 18 years. They're stuck. In fact, they're going backwards, because all their theories are basically based on fringe, speculative ideas, because it goes against the official narrative. That's the point of the whole movement, is that you can't believe what the government says. Even if you read the 9/11 Commission report, everything in it is a lie, but it's not. Not everything's a lie. The commission report is an incomplete report, because it didn't include the Gerald Shea memo. It didn't include the Able Danger program. It didn't include the Pentbomb report, Saudi financing, the Muassad al-Jar, all these people, the contacts. That's missing from the report. So it's not that the whole thing is false or that the whole thing is true. It's just incomplete. But to the 9/11 Truth Movement, they are so militant in this ideology, in this thinking, that anything from the government, anything that's even outside of us, cannot be believed. Even with 100 people that were within the Pentagon, Arlington County, we're talking about people from the public sector, all walks of life, who saw the plane actually nosedive off Highway 356 or something, and went right into the Pentagon. I got one guy who basically told me that he was an Army soldier stationed at Fort something, I don't know what the fort was, Fort Myer, I think. He basically said that he got there, and he said that everyone there is a liar, and that they all work for the government, and that I'm telling you the truth, no plane hit the Pentagon. And I find out that the guy wasn't even there. But yet that didn't stop from alt-right, these fringe channels, to basically interview him and take him at his word value. Well, that's how disinformation spreads. So the CIA and the government don't need to do anything. They could just basically sit back. Oh, these guys are ruined. Now, the question is, Tommy,
that might have
whether
been
this
the
was
CIA
manufactured or
doing
not.
something.
Yeah, was this manufactured?
Right.
Did it take one or two people like an Alex Jones or somebody high, very important to basically propose a theory and then it took off? That very well could happen.
Yeah.
I don't know, but the truth movement basically is destroyed on their own, beliefs and speculation.
Well, it's like something you were saying earlier. It's like, it's very much, it's a lot easier to lie by omission than to just outright lie.
Yeah.
And so by leaving out information, it's, you can leave enough openings to where the imagination can run wherever. And if you have a willing propagandist arm of like CNN and MSNBC filling in those gaps,
Yeah.
then,
Yeah, I would agree. And as long as we have a media that basically won't report on the important issues, and as long as we have the 9/11 truth movement, basically, and all these people that are involved with it, a lot of these people that propose these theories, sandwich that together to the public. And what do they have? Well, I can't go to the media, I can't go to the government because they're not reporting on the Canastraro document or Operation Encore. Well, I might as well go toward the people that, basically are, saying they're against the government, but are unwittingly servicing the government by proposing theories that are acting as a
useful
cover-up
idiots
for the cover-up. Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I hate to use that term because there are many people in the 9/11 truth movement who are not, but they're vilified by their own movement because they don't believe that no plane hit the Pentagon. One guy in particular, and I'll name him, and I feel I have a soft spot for him. I know him for a long time, and his name is David Chandler. David Chandler was the face of the truth movement for years. He was a strong proponent. He's a teacher, and really respectable in his circles. He actually helped to narrate a most comprehensive video about what took place at the Pentagon. It's the best investigative series on 9/11 I've ever seen. And it was by Wayne Costi. And basically what happened was when they released this, almost immediately, the truth movement that was hijacked by these fringe elements turned on these two. And it became very personal. And they were actually considered as lepers within their own community. They weren't welcome anywhere. They weren't invited to speak anywhere where these people were speaking, and their names were like stricken off the record books of history. And I'm like, wow, if they could do that to them, what do you think of us? As people that, only propose factual information. Well, they hate us. I have a stigma with these people because they think I'm CIA. And I tell them, look, I don't even have a closet door on my closet. I deserve better pay. So yeah, I mean, they're Scientologists in that they don't play defense; they go on the attack.
Yeah.
And I think it goes back to your point about this, very fervent militant mentality, this compartmentalization that you bring up. And boy, does it shine through with the truth movement today. And by the way, all those people that propose these theories, they're no longer active. They were active 5 years ago, 10 years ago, but you don't hear about these people anymore because they can only say these things time after time before they get boring, even within their own circles, because they don't learn anything new. They won't read about the Canastraro document. They won't read, because they don't believe in hijackers. So why should we learn about this? Not knowing that this information shows even a bigger cover-up that they're willing to cover up with their own fanatic and fringe theories.
Yeah.
So they don't even realize what they're doing. So yeah, I absolutely agree with you that there's a level of compartmentalization going on here. And I think it's very militant. It's almost religious.
Yeah, it's like compartmentalization and competition all at the same time.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think it's wow, what a shame. Because we could use these people. We need these people. And I won't alienate them. I'll only alienate the self-professed experts and leaders of these people, but I consider most of them victims.
Yeah.
I consider them victims. And I think they deserve, to hear the truth as opposed to wanting to believe in the truth. I want them to know something because with knowledge, we can act on it, as I say.
Well, I think that's a great place to end off. I got to get to bed, and
Get some sleep, will you?
I still have to run outside and close my chickens up.
You are working manual labor in 110-degree heat. You deserve a
It
sauna.
it was not 110 today. I will be fair. It
I don't
was, I
care.
think it was 96 today.
Okay, 96 dry heat. You're doing manual labor. You deserve, a TV dinner.
Oh man, dude, I'm freaking so sore. We were unloading, like hand unloading truck today, so I'm
Holy,
very sore.
yeah.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. Like I was actually gonna come home. I had planned on, when I left the house this morning, I was like, I'm gonna come home this afternoon. I'm gonna work out. I'm gonna get a good workout in before I have my dude. Oh man,
You could.
my legs were like rubber. My back was stiff. I'm like, damn, I'm getting old.
You realize that you probably did 2 of the workouts in that heat in the
Probably.
elements.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah, probably. But well, you have any closing statements you want to like leave people with that kind of summarize what's going on here and what we're
Yeah,
finding out?
listen, I would just say this. I mean, look, we have enough at our disposal. I mean, now we do. We have enough. Well, I'd like to get more. I really like, for the Israeli angle anyway. But we have enough to get our foot in the door to basically get a new investigation, as Dan Christian said before, the Bulldog said. And now all we need is the people. We need the people. We need people to basically say, hey, listen, we need to get straight to the bottom of the point. We need to have tangible evidence to bring in a court of law before it's too late, before we end up like JFK, where the real conspiracy is that he was murdered by within our own government. But the perpetrators are still alive for 9/11, and we still have time. So we need enough people to report on this, to bring light to this. And I hope, whoever's listening has the pleasure of listening to yourself and myself, but to bring attention to the Canastraro document and Operation Encore files, and also the General Shea memorandum, and to share this information widely so we can get enough people to bring a new investigation, hopefully.
Yes, sir. All right. Well, plug away, my man.
Adam Fitzgerald. Just Google my name, Adam Fitzgerald 9/11. I actually come right up. I'm surprised. I use it at work to say I'm popular. I don't care. I don't want people to remember me. I want people to remember the information. But yeah, Adam Fitzgerald 9/11. If you go to my Twitter _ Adam Fitzgerald, I have a pinned tweet where it has my WordPress, where I upload 6,000 documents and files. I also have a podcast called The Darkened Hour. Me and Richard Cox do work on there. And YouTube. I believe I am the largest 9/11 channel in the world right now. Me and DJ Thermodetner are 1 and 2, or you could switch both. It's both of us. But we'll
And you
always
get some incredible interviews.
listen, that I got very lucky. I try to build a reputation of being as an honest reporter, investigator as possibly as I can. And, people are, want to come on and,
Well, that doesn't sound
all I
like
do is
luck.
make the
That sounds
effort.
like work.
Yeah, I'm hoping that I can get enough people to bring, hey, I just had on, of all people.
No, but what I'm saying is you cut yourself short, man. You say you got very lucky. You didn't get lucky. You worked your ass off to be as honest as possible. Even if the path that you found yourself going down was completely opposite of your previous opinions, you just like, all right, well, this is the truth. This is where I'm going. And you just dismissed all your preconceived notions and you walk down the path of the truth, and that has created a good reputation for you. And that's a lot of hard work. That is not luck. You did that.
Well, thank you. I think it's a lot about patience and a lot about who you know in circles. And so I just got fortunate that I knew a couple of people that, were, important to the 9/11 investigation, and they considered me, as, I guess reputable, and it led to a bigger circle. And, I met with people like Scott Horton and like Ken Williams and Marc Rossini. I just had on the CIA chief of station, Michael Scheuer. I just spoke with him, and it's a very rare interview. And I like I said, a lot, all right.
Like I said, some great fucking interviews.
Well, thank you very much for it. But yeah, no, that's how you can find me. I'm very easy to find.
All
And
right.
I want to be that way, because when I first started, Tommy, I had nobody to turn to.
Yeah.
And if people want to speak with me and talk with me privately or online, I want to be accessible as much as I can.
Yeah. Well, I feel you, man. Well, I'm going to stop this recording. And we're going to shut this baby down, and we will be doing this again very soon because I always love talking to Adam.
Thanks, man.
All right.